Okay, this is Take Zero TV. Reminder that we're going to have a multitude of different subjects, whether it be animals attacking, conspiracy theories, celebrities, Hollywood, entertainment, sports, dancing, social media, natural health, whatever it may be. We're going to cover today part one of conspiracy or fact or both. You know, the 80s were a big decade for megastars like Prince, Michael Jackson, Madonna, who ironically were all born the same year, 1958. Prince actually grew up loving music. He got to see Michael Jackson and Jackson 5 early on, and he looked up to Michael Jackson. Believe it or not, they both had a certain mystique about them. Michael Jackson popping up in people's songs, like the Doobie Brothers, What a Fool Believes.
Michael Jackson singing a cappella to Elizabeth Taylor. It's the candid phone call you've never heard, captured on tape. We have the lost video for this ET exclusive.
What a fool believes, you know that. And she, wise man has the power.
It's Michael Jackson in a rare home movie singing a Doobie Brothers classic. Why? He secretly sang backup for the group and others back in the day.
Dun, 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 dun. She goes up way back in a long ago. Said I'm not who she had a place in his life. People always say, you sound like Michael Jackson. They don't realize it's me singing those parts.
Michael, in an unguarded moment, is actually on a private phone call with his dear friend Elizabeth Taylor, whose picture sits beside him on the table. Jackson, dressed in a sparkly blue jacket with a white t-shirt underneath, is sitting in his home.
Remember this one? Minute by minute by minute by, I keep holding on. I keep holding on. I keep holding on.
Filmmaker Brian Michael Stoller, who was also Michael's producing partner, shot the footage of him in 2003.
I remember when he went to call her, he says, do you want to talk to Liz? Do you want to talk to Liz? So I got to say hello to her briefly, and then he took the phone.
Yeah, I love that.
And just like the Elizabeth Taylor impromptu serenade, these are now some of the only images we have of the King of Pop unguarded.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was going to sing, and he was looking at the camera and smiling. Like, he gave me a little performance, like, I'm giving you a little show here.
I keep holding on. I keep holding on. I keep holding on.
And also, on the Rockwells, Somebody's Watching Me. Prince, using the moniker Jamie Starr, that actually recorded and sung mostly all of their songs and vanities. He would have them dub their voice over his, then take his voice out. You can hear him in the Times hit Cool.
Into the mirror, just tell me something I already know.
Also in the Times hit Get It Up. And others. They also had overwhelming fathers that were like tyrants. You've seen a movie with the Jacksons. I'm not sure if you've seen any of the documentaries on Prince and his overwhelming father. He was relentlessly hard on Prince, as was Joe Jackson on Michael Jackson. When Prince had his comeuppance with his first 4 CDs, he was on his way. He had just made 1999, and it was one night that James Brown was on stage.
Video of him at James Brown's gig, he always had this thing that was on him. Like, they would But Michael had 25 years experience and Prince had 5 years. And so Michael went up there and in the video you'll see that. He sang for about 15 seconds and then did his moonwalk himself for 15 seconds and picked up the tempo. And he whispered in James Brown's ear and said, bring Prince, come up. Prince jumped on the back of his bodyguard, took his glove, threw him off, and then threw him back at him, and came up there and stopped and challenged Michael. That's not the way you do cameos, man. You join the family, you know. You don't go up there trying to fight each other or compete with each other. And he made a fool out of himself that night. So he waited for them after the show, and the limousine wanted to run over Latoya and Michael.
Oh my God.
There's some drama, mama. Always drama. Michael kept love drama.
His dance moves on stage would not be where it would be over the next 5 to 8 years. And here is will.i.am, a close friend of Michael Jackson. This is his account.
Mike wants to know how come Prince didn't acknowledge him on stage. I'm like, that ain't my stage. Hey, Mike, I'm sorry, bro. I think he's just trying to, protect your privacy. So then Mike says, why don't you come over to my house for breakfast in the morning? So I go to his house early in the morning for breakfast. And he's like, first thing he says when I open the door, why was Prince playing the bass in my face? I was like, I'm like, no, he loves you. He's like, no, he doesn't. One time he tried to run me and my mama over with the car.
A Virgo don't let nothing
go.
No,
I'm dead ass. This is real shit.
There would be a rivalry in the tabloids, in the magazines, and in real life. Michael Jackson, as you heard, called Prince a meanie. Quincy Jones tried to have them do a truce. They came to his house. Prince had some stuff that Michael Jackson thought was voodoo. Prince constantly trolled Michael Jackson, kept calling him Camille. Quincy tried to talk Prince into being, in the video, bad.
There was never any rivalry between you and Mr. Jackson?
Oh, not to me, no.
Okay. So I love the story of you, just all these Prince, I'm sorry. That's the guy you used to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's the story of you turning down Bad.
Well, that Wesley Snipes character,
right.
that would have been me. All right, now you run that video in your mind. The first line of that song is, your butt is mine.
Your butt is mine.
Now, I said, who gonna sing that to whom? Because you sure ain't singing it to me. And I sure ain't singing it to you. So, right there we got a problem.
It's so weird now. You were made out to be this weird cat, and he was like Mr. Disney, and you're married. Chilling. You're like a married man.
Well,
play it.
There again, hopefully the press will get to the point where we'll it'll be a law where you have to tell the truth. It won't be about speculation. I'm a musician. I live for that. I live for playing and creating songs.
Now, later on, Prince would invite Michael Jackson to his house. Listen to this account by Prince's dancer and sometimes lover, Kat.
Of course.
Oh,
Thank you for asking me that.
You got to tell me about
Yes. I met, it was Prince and I and Sheila E. And Michael was playing in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Michael invited Prince to come to the show. But, of course, Prince invited me and Sheila E. And we were wearing those coats, the one that says woman. Remember that orange coat I wore? And then Sheila wore the one called Sheila E. And then Prince had on a black one.
Yep.
Okay, so we get to the concert. We're at the, we go through the back. And before Michael went on stage. So I have on these Ray-Ban glasses. And Prince knows I have a habit bad habit of staring at celebrities like in awe, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So Prince told me, don't stare. So he gave me a pair of Ray-Bans. I put them on. We go backstage before Michael goes on stage, and Michael was so tall. I couldn't believe it. He was very tall, and he wore this, you know those boxing belts for boxing champions when they win the belt? Mm-hmm. He wore that belt. So this big belt is on him. He's backstage before he went on stage. We get back there, all these cameras are back there, and then it's me, Prince, and Sheila, and then Michael goes, hi, Sheila. I haven't seen you since We Are the World, you know? And then Prince goes, this is Kat. So I extended my hand and shook his hand, trying not to, like, freak out. And so Michael Jackson's crew pulled out a camera, a big news camera, and Prince goes, no, film me. I told you. No, film me. So the cameraman pulled down the camera, stopped filming. We're all talking and stuff, and I'm just standing there like a lollipop frozen. So then Prince and Michael are talking, and then I think Prince said something like after party at Paisley Park. So Prince and I and Sheila go out there right before the show started. We watched Michael for about 15 minutes, and then we left. And then we go back to Paisley Park. After the show, Michael comes, and Prince told us we had to leave because him and Michael were going to, spend some private time together at Prince's house. But I do remember this. Then I told Prince he was mean for that. So when Michael, I think was Michael came to our concert, or we were at his concert, me and Prince wore our mirror, those mirror hearts? Mm-hmm. The hearts?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Prince purposely, I kid you not, he purposely caught a light. The lights that's on stage. He took the mirror heart and made sure the light hit the mirror heart and reflected in Michael Jackson's face.
It's a mess.
He literally did. He literally did. Prince said, watch this. And he took the mirror heart, and one of the lights hit the stage to flash Michael in the eyes. Yeah, he did that. Yeah.
Wow.
That was kind of mean. It was so mean. He really did. Tell me, watch this. Oh, this is another thing. So when we came in, we're all wearing these cashmere coats. Prince had on his and said Prince. I had on mine and said woman. Sheila had on hers and said Sheila. So Michael said, I really like those coats. Where did you get them from? And Prince said, do you want me to make you one and put 1986 on it? Because that was the last time you had a hit with the Wall album. Wow. Oh, remember that song? Yes, he did. I'm not kidding you. He actually did. Because Michael really loved the coats. He was so sincere.
Why are you doing Michael like that? Why are you doing Michael like that?
Oh, Prince.
Well, because they were kind of friends, but like competing with each other. But Michael was gangster. Michael was cool as hell. But when Michael said he liked those coats, and Prince said, would you like one? And Michael said, yes. And Prince said, whatever year The Wall came out. What year was that? Remember The Wall? The year Michael Jackson's The Wall came out.
You Off the Wall?
Off the Wall, yeah.
Oh, that was 79?
Okay, well, Prince said, yeah, I'll get you one with that year on the back.
Stop it.
Prince said it just like this. What year do you want? The year The Wall came out. That was crazy. Yes, he did.
That's crazy.
Because at the time, all of our coats said 1988 on the back. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll never forget that. I thought, oh, you're so mean. He literally said that to Michael. But then at the end of the night, Michael came to Paisley Park, and then him and Prince ended up going to his house, and they had a really good chat. People thought they were really enemies, but they were really good friends. They really were. I hate when they, say that Michael and Prince were enemies. No, they weren't.
See, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
somebody that was there can say that,
Yeah, they weren't. I wish people would stop saying that. They were really good friends. They had mutual respect for each other.
Also, you heard Chris speak about when they went to a Prince concert.
I remember one night me and Mike Michael went to see Prince in Vegas. That was crazy. I couldn't believe this shit. I was with the king going to see the prince. That was some crazy shit. I'm serious. I'm with Michael. We sitting there, you know, and everything was cool, but Prince didn't say, you know, that Michael was there. So I was like, concerned. I said, Michael, he didn't even say you here. You know, I was trying to start something. Michael, Chris, stop it, Chris. He probably just don't want to bring any attention on me. That's all. I said, well, he should say something. Chris, stop it. You shut up and listen to the show. Hey, Michael, don't tell me to shut up. I don't care about no king of pop. I'll pop your ass in the mouth. Chris, I didn't mean it like that. Just be quiet. Prince was there. Prince got a little attitude. I think he saw Michael, and he was like, he didn't say nothing. He just was looking like. He was like, what the hell are you doing here? He looked like, what the hell are you doing here? All of a sudden, Prince came over to Michael like that. He bent down. What are you doing here? Trying to steal my moves, huh? I was like, oh, there's some shit going on. Maybe something happened in the 80s I don't know about. Michael said, Chris, stop it. He did not say that. I love it. We still got Prince. And Michael, my buddy, we still got Prince. Prince is cool, but you can't talk to Prince like I can talk to Mike, but Prince don't like to talk all the time. I tried to talk to him, he called his security guard on me. I said, hey, Prince, how you doing? He said, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk. I said, man, I'm just trying to say hello. I don't give a damn. I don't want to talk. Shit. I'm Prince, goddammit. I ain't trying to talk.
Him, Michael Jackson, I believe it was Will.I.Am.
Michael Jackson and Prince did not get along, which I did not know that. But you took Michael to see Prince, or you took Prince to see Michael? Which was it?
So one time, Black Eyed Peas had a show in Vegas, and we got to Vegas, and I get a phone call from Michael, and he says, it's Michael, and I heard you guys are performing tonight. I was like, yeah, we go on at 9 p.m. He was like, oh, rats, I gotta put the kids to sleep. I was like, oh, well, later on I'm performing with Prince. I'm probably gonna do this little number with Prince at the Rio. And he said, I'd love to do that, but I don't know if I can do that. I was like, why? He's like, oh, I don't know. Prince and I always have been at odds with each other. I was like, oh no, let me call him on the phone and I'll call you right back. I think everything will be great. So hang up the phone, call this lady named Ruth, who then would put me in contact with Prince. I said, hey, Michael Jackson wants to come to the show. Can you put him in a VIP section where no one knows he's there? So Prince said, oh yeah, we could arrange that. So I got off the phone, called Michael Jackson and said, it's set, everything's gonna be great. We walk him to the VIP room, get off the stage, go sit down with me, Prince, and his manager, and Chris Tucker. So then Prince is playing the bass, walks off the stage, walks to our area, our section where Michael Jackson's at. Now say, for example, you're Michael Jackson. I'm Prince. And goes off to the stage, right? So Michael Jackson's like, what's up with Prince playing the bass in my face?
That could have been a song. That was a good song.
And he came, he started playing the guitar in Michael Jackson's face, gyrating his hips in front of him. Let's not make Michael innocent. Michael Jackson watched Purple Rain. He enjoyed the movie, said it was good. He heard about how bad Under the Cherry Moon was. He invited a lot of friends over so they can laugh at how bad the movie actually was. But when it was all said and done, You see any, you saw the press conference when Michael Jackson was going through the allegations. Prince spoke for the first time publicly about Mike. He said, let's wait a minute.
Hypothetically, who would win in a fist fight, you or Michael Jackson? Michael's not a fighter, he's a lover. Can I just say something? I've never really spoke publicly about Michael. We should all just kind of like chill, because it's, you know, he may know something none of us really know.
They both would die, sadly, in the same way. Michael Jackson, a reaction that he would never wake up from, to propofol. Prince was depressed. He locked himself in his room for a week and a half, according to Tavis Smiley. Less than 8 years later, Prince would die from a reaction to fentanyl. He was taking medication, Percocets and Oxycontins, for hip pain. He had a reaction on an airplane that his team had to stop a few days prior. He had lost consciousness. They made emergency landing. They revived him with Narcan. They called in a specialist to try to help and intervene. And when the doctor, the lead doctor, sent his son, when he got there, unfortunately that morning, Prince would be laying found dead right outside the elevator. In the irony of all irony, he had asked L.A. Reid in a gathering if he had ever dreamed about dying in an elevator. Two of the biggest stars of the 80s, rivals and friends that shared a lot of similarities, including being vegan and witnesses. Prince, Michael Jackson. Next up, we have the killing of a president, caught on live TV. JFK, John F. Kennedy, whose father and John F. Kennedy having mob ties. His father being involved in the bootlegging business with a high degree of education. The mob helping his son win governor, possibly presidency. Were there promises given that were not kept? You have some people say CIA. You have some saying Lee Harvey Oswald was driven by political rage. I disagree. I believe the Mafia was involved. I believe the man who killed Lee Harvey Oswald to get rid of the witness, Jack Ruby, was affiliated with the mob, with Marcelo and Santo Trafficante. Check this out.
But in the mid-50s Florida, the international gateway to the Caribbean is ruled by Santo Trafficante, a mob boss turning neighboring Cuba into a gambling paradise.
He was very powerful. He was the go-to guy when it came to Cuba.
He was a mafia don who was smart enough to avoid the limelight.
On the verge of becoming the wealthiest mob boss of them all, he is betrayed by one head of state, then another. Hell-bent on revenge, we know he tried to kill one. But did he succeed in killing the second? Was Santo Trafficante behind the terrible assassination that shocked the United States?
Nothing's more sensational than the assassination of the president.
This is the story of Florida's top don, Santo Trafficante. November the 22nd, 1963, Dallas, Texas. President Kennedy and his wife are heading for a lunch with civic leaders.
The motorcade begins the 11-mile ride to the Dallas Trade Mart, where the president is to deliver a major address.
The president's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the Trade Mart.
The president is hit by 3 bullets in quick succession.
It appears as though something has happened. happen in the motorcade route. Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time.
The Dallas police almost immediately identified Lee Harvey Oswald.
They quickly put together a description of Lee Harvey Oswald as a lone nut who may have had communist sympathies and was involved in pro-Castro Cuban operations.
Within 2 hours, the pro-Cuban revolutionary is arrested. Case seemingly closed. Two days later, Oswald is being transferred to the county jail.
You shoot the president?
I didn't shoot anybody, no, sir.
A man steps out of the crowd. The gunman is another man with strong links to Cuba, Jack Ruby. One year later, the Warren report concludes that Oswald acted alone, and his motives were political. Oswald's killer, Jack Ruby, also acted alone.
Just a disgruntled American saddened by Kennedy's death who wanted to take revenge against the accused shooter.
But from the moment it is published, the rushed report comes under intense criticism.
The report was built around the evidence most favorable to that conclusion.
Kennedy's successor, the new president, Johnson, does not want the investigation to drag on.
It was coming up on the re-election, and President Johnson simply did not want the question of what happened to President Kennedy as an issue.
It was obvious to many people it had been done very flimsily. It wasn't a really solid report. There are many questions.
For over a decade, the idea that Oswald was acting alone just didn't sit well. The press report on rumors that Oswald was working for the CIA, that he was working for the Cuban revolutionary leader Fidel Castro, or even the mob. "12 years after the Warren report, a House Select Committee is formed in another attempt to get to the truth. In September 1978, the committee called a powerful and ruthless mafioso. He was the head of the Florida Mafia and one-time king of Cuba's casinos.
For the record, will the witness please state his full name?
Santo Trafficante.
Mr. Trafficante, I want to ask you a question that is very important to this committee, and that is, did you have any foreknowledge of the assassination of President Kennedy?
Someone believes that Santo Trafficante knows more about the death of John F. Kennedy than he should. That man is Chief Counsel to the House Select Committee, Robert Blakey. At the very moment the news of the assassination breaks, Blakey is working as a prosecutor in the State Department.
I myself was in the office with Robert Kennedy, the president's brother. All of a sudden, the news of the assassination came out. That somebody would shoot at an American president is unbelievable.
When attorney Blakey first hears the rumors of mob involvement, he doesn't think there is anything in them.
I thought they didn't do it. The killing of Kennedy was not with a machine gun and guys dressed in black.
But when Blakey drafts the famous RICO laws that will eventually put the heads of 5 major crime families behind bars, he goes on a steep learning curve and discovers that the Mafia are now a much more sophisticated outfit.
Until the RICO law was passed, mob bosses were virtually immune from prosecution. They never pulled a trigger, they never beat anybody up. The RICO law was able to get them because they were now part of an enterprise.
Now Blakey sets his sights on Trafficante, the one-time Cuban casino king. The first alarm bell is triggered by the death of Oswald.
The killing of Oswald on the way to the jail has all the earmarks of an assassination of the assassin.
Not only is Oswald's murder typical of a mob hit, the man who killed Oswald, Jack Ruby, runs a nightclub used by gangsters linked to a New Orleans mob boss, Carlos Marcello. And Marcello is Trafficante's closest mob ally.
While he's not a member of the Mafia, there are connections to organized crime and to the Mafia in particular.
And there are other threads in the report that Blakey feels need pulling.
It turned out that it was not as hard-clad as it might be in a conclusion.
The original Warren report glossed over other connections between Oswald and the same Carlos Marcello. Lee Harvey Oswald's uncle and surrogate father is none other than Carlos Marcello's bookmaker. And both Oswald and Ruby have direct connections to Cuba. And somewhere in the middle of this web of intrigue sits the one-time Cuban racketeer, Santo Trafficante.
If you take his connections and trace them out like a concentric circle, it looks like organized crime in some sense were responsible.
So who is this elusive Santo Trafficante?
What is your current occupation?
I'm retired.
This is far from the truth.
By the late 1970s, Trafficante was still considered the boss of the Tampa Mafia and still an influential figure not only in the mob scene in Florida, but nationally.
He had these piercing eyes that could look right through your soul. He could be a ruthless killer. He could turn on you instantly and whack someone and no problem at all.
In 1954, Santo Trafficante inherits the Florida mob from his father.
It's pretty unusual for mafia bosses to hand control over to the sons.
Trafficante Sr. is notorious for eliminating enemies, regardless of profile or reputation. A few years earlier, he was being challenged for supremacy by a gangster called Jimmy Lumia. Trafficante Sr. taught his son what a trafficante does with those who show no respect. Lumia was a well-known figure in Florida, a close friend of the mayor. Nonetheless, Trafficante Sr. sanctioned the hit. It's a valuable lesson to Trafficante Jr. No matter how high a profile, if someone crosses you, you hit them. Though ruthless, the group Trafficante inherits is little more than a small-time gambling outfit in Tampa. But the young mobster sees an opportunity to expand his operation, a potential gold mine sitting just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. In the early 50s, the Caribbean island of Cuba is run by a brutal and corrupt ex-general called Fulgencio Batista, and Batista throws the doors open to the Mafia. Operating completely free of American regulations, mobsters invest heavily in casinos and hotels where they have no trouble with the authorities.
The appeal of Cuba was that a very corruptible government at that time.
It was a deal with the dictator. They kicked back every night 10% of the earnings from these casinos. It was a tropical paradise.
Could you tell us when you moved to Cuba?
Around 1953 or 1954. I was in the gambling business and the nightclub casino business, which were legal at that time in Cuba.
Trafficante becomes the facilitator for other crime families to move in. Tampa has strong community ties with Cuba, and he is one of the only mobsters to speak the same language.
Trafficante and the Tampa guys, they spoke Spanish, which a lot of the New York mobsters who were operating in Cuba didn't.
Trafficante had the establishment, the connections, he knew the people. It was all set there.
Would you say that collectively, your investment could have been over $1 million?
No.
In fact, Trafficante earns a fortune from his multiple casinos and nightclubs.
He had interest in 5 casinos. He raked in millions all the time.
And it was a booming place for the Mafia.
As profitable as the casinos are, they are nothing compared to a new and lucrative market: drugs. Back in the days of Prohibition, most liquor found its way into the United States through Canada. It made the mobs of New York and Chicago very wealthy. Now, drugs are the new commodity, and Cuba the major gateway, right in Trafficante's backyard. Illegal drugs are set to make Trafficante one of the wealthiest dons in the U.S.
Even if you got the northern mobsters coming down, they were second bananas to the Trafficante family in Cuba.
Within just a few years, the fortune from drugs and gambling ensures the ambitious and cunning Santo Trafficante Jr. has a seat at the mob's top table. November 14th, 1957. A summit is called in Appalachian, New York. The top crime bosses from around the United States are invited, and Santo Trafficante Jr. is now on the list.
Trafficante still wasn't fully on the radar as a big shot. But things were happening that were going to make him an important figure.
Also present is Sam Giancana, boss of the Chicago outfit. The top mob bosses are keen to hear about the leader of the Cuban frontier. But expensive cars with license plates from around the country arouse the curiosity of the local and state law enforcement.
This is the police. You are surrounded. Throw down your weapons and put your hands in the air.
Trafficante escapes jail, but the publicity of the raid shines unprecedented light on the Mafia. It confirms the existence of a national crime syndicate which some had long refused to acknowledge.
Everybody, including FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, said there is no such thing as a national crime syndicate. All of a sudden, all these guys got arrested there by the state police. It was a great shocker that showed the Mafia is real.
Top mobster names are sprawled across national newspapers, and the stranger on the verge of mob success is thrown into the limelight.
Suddenly, here was this unknown character in the midst of all dozens of major mob bosses. So it showed you his rank, his stature, and his importance.
Trafficante flees from the attention of law enforcement and the glare of publicity from news reports. It's the last thing he wants, and so he disappears back to Cuba. Within just a few years, Trafficante is making millions, importing drugs through Cuba and cleaning the profits through a chain of casinos.
Santo Trafficante was really the major domo and the major figure in gambling in Havana.
But when a young revolutionary communist called Fidel Castro threatens to overthrow General Batista, it puts Trafficante's expanding empire in jeopardy.
Can you tell us, in late 1958, what was the result of the activities of Castro?
Wasn't too good. Every other day they had bombs and stuff like that.
Trafficante cares little for politics, but a lot about profits. So the mob boss moves fast, and like any smart gambler, he covers all the angles.
In the years before the revolution, Castro had come to Tampa, Ybor City, a number of times to do fundraising and speaking events. When he came to town, he would meet with the Trafficantes as well.
In exchange for money, Trafficante secures a deal with the rebel. Even if Castro's revolution succeeds, he has guarantees that it will be business as usual for the mob in Cuba.
Trafficante definitely was hedging his bets. He was paying off the Batista officials and the government, but at the same time, he was giving money to the guerrillas and to Castro.
But by 1958, as the violence escalates, Castro's guerrillas hit profits. Gamblers start deserting the casinos. Other bosses fold and quit Cuba, but Trafficante holds his nerve.
While every other mob figure bolted back to the U.S., he stayed put. He felt secure.
All his buddies, everyone was pulling out. Trafficante felt that he could schmooze his way back in and keep what he had going there.
Whoever wins, Batista or Castro, the Florida mob boss Santo Trafficante believes his empire is safe.
Trafficante had always thought, look, you just buy your way out of anything down here.
On January the 1st, 1959, Castro finally takes control as General Batista flees Cuba. It's only then that the king of Cuba's casinos discovers that he has seriously miscalculated.
He thought he knew the territory. He was wrong.
Castro was a little different fella.
Little did he know that Fidel Castro didn't support anything that they were doing.
Trafficante has been double-crossed.
He waited too long to get out of Cuba.
I got news that the Cuban officials were looking for to put me in jail because one of the things I was a Batista collaborator. They raided my apartment. They were looking for money. They tore up the furniture. They had weapons. I knew that sooner or later I would have to get out of there.
Trafficante soon finds it's not just his criminal empire that's in danger. His life hangs by a thread.
Castro actually jails Trafficante in Triscornia Detention Center.
With men disappearing from the cells around him, Trafficante knows the deal.
You could hear the execution, firing squads taking care of Castro's enemies.
They were going to execute him. That's how close it came for him not making it out of Cuba.
Trafficante has to get out, and fast. He reaches out to his long-term ally, New Orleans mob boss, Carlos Marcello.
Mr. Trafficante, do you know Carlos Marcello?
Yes, sir, I know Carlos Marcello about 30 years.
Mysteriously, around the time Trafficante is in jail, Carlos Marcello's bagman, Jack Ruby, makes frequent trips to Cuba.
We know that Jack Ruby made quick trips from Cuba to Miami and back that have no explanation if he was just a tourist.
Could Ruby have been trying to get Trafficante out of jail? The next question gets to the heart of the conspiracy investigation.
Mr. Trafficante, did you ever know a Jack Ruby?
No, sir, I never remember meeting Jack Ruby.
Never remember meeting him?
No.
It seems that Trafficante understands the danger of linking himself to Jack Ruby, the man who shot Lee Harvey Oswald.
Trafficante denied it, and denied that he knew Jack Ruby. But there's every reason to disbelieve Trafficante on it.
The committee is desperately trying to join the dots.
Ruby had been connected to Carlos Marcello. He had been running money mainly for Carlos Marcello out of Cuba.
2 months after his arrest by Castro in August 1959, Trafficante is unexpectedly released from jail. Could Ruby have been paying someone off?
He shouldn't have gotten out, period. End of story.
There's little doubt that he got out the very simple way. He bribed his way.
This time, Trafficante doesn't gamble. He leaves Cuba. He's lost everything.
I can see that I had to leave there. There was nothing there for me. Everybody was being arrested and nobody was safe. So I made out I was coming to the States for just a visit, and I never went back.
He was devastated. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
He had multiple millions invested either by himself or through other members of the mob. These were hard dollars, multi-million.
He had more casinos than anybody else. From his point of view, the Cuban Revolution was a disaster.
The gambling empire Trafficante helped to build in Cuba now shifts west to Bugsy Siegel's Las Vegas. Even worse, mob bosses across the United States who had invested in Trafficante's Cuban island haven now want their money back. Trafficante's seat at the Mafia top table has been taken from him. And there is only one man to blame for his downfall.
Santo never forgave Castro. One of his biggest aims in life was getting back to Cuba and getting rid of Castro. He would have done anything he could possibly to do it.
But Trafficante isn't the only one with a grudge against Castro.
In Key West, Florida, anti-communist feeling mounts. Fidel Castro is hanged in effigy. Anti-Castro forces are beginning to join hands in other cities.
Santo Trafficante cultivates ties with the anti-Castro exile movement in Florida and surrounds himself with a mob of Cuban gangsters. His involvement doesn't go unnoticed. Trafficante soon discovers that he is aligned with some very powerful allies. September 1960. Trafficante is approached by a messenger sent by the boss of Chicago, Sam Giancana. Giancana wants Trafficante to carry out one of the most high-profile hits in mob history, to kill Castro. But Giancana isn't authorizing the hit. In fact, the contract doesn't come from the Mafia at all.
Mr. Trafficani, can you tell us who was the person who first contacted you?
John Rosselli.
John Rosselli is Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana's right-hand man.
Could you tell us the substance of the conversation you had with him?
Well, he told me that the CIA and the United States government wanted this thing done. That is what he said to me.
In the history of organized crime, the lines between the mob and law enforcement are often blurred. But Trafficante's revelation breaks new ground. The American government were asking mob boss Sam Giancana to help assassinate the revolutionary leader of Cuba.
The CIA were desperate to get rid of Castro. He was a persona non grata.
But the CIA is too smart to carry out the assassination itself.
When the U.S. government was looking for somebody to assassinate Castro, they said, well, who are good assassins? They said, the Mafia.
It just shows you the respect that law enforcement had for the Mafia. They could get things done in a way that law enforcement or legitimate operations could not.
The real scandal is the assumption on the part of the CIA that the Mafia was a group of hired killers.
Now the CIA approached Giancana and asked him to find a hitman. Giancana knows when it comes to Cuba, there is only one man with the connections, the king of Cuban casinos, Santo Trafficante.
That was just the kind of man the CIA was looking for, a man that belonged to an organization that was skilled in murder and plots and was very unhappy, had lost a lot of money, and would do anything to get back there.
In September 1960, a meeting is arranged at the Fontainebleau Hotel, Miami, between the CIA, Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana, and his chosen hitman, Florida mob boss Santo Trafficante. The CIA and the mob are now at the same table with a single sinister aim, an attempt on a world leader's life.
What was your reaction to killing President Castro?
Well, at the time, I think it was a good thing because he had established a communistic base 90 miles from the United States. And being that the United States government wanted this thing done, I go along with it. Same as a war. I figure it was like a war.
Trafficante was helping out the CIA because anything that worked to get rid of Castro would be a benefit to him.
The agency first suggests a classic mobster hit in which Castro would die in a hail of bullets.
The government idea was you just send your assassins in and they shoot the fellow down.
There is something funny about the CIA trying to tell the mob how to kill someone.
Giancana and Trafficante propose a more subtle approach.
Giancana and Trafficante, they said, you've got to do this in a clever way. That's when all these poisoning plots were considered.
Was there discussion about poison pills?
There was a discussion about pills, yes, sir. I'm telling you, any kind of a way that was possible to get rid of him.
And Trafficante knows an official who can get close to Castro.
Trafficante could get Castro to some restaurant where they would slip poison pills into his food.
A plan is agreed, and the CIA officers hand over $150,000 in cash. A line has been crossed. The CIA has just paid the mob to kill Castro.
Trafficante knew it was crazy, but he wasn't stupid enough to pass up $150,000. That was tax-free.
But the money and getting revenge on Castro is only part of the deal. In exchange, law enforcement agencies will turn a blind eye to Mafia operations.
He was told that if he did this little job for the government, he was home free. Nobody would bother him anymore.
But the plot is soon forgotten as the move against Castro goes to another level. Behind the scenes, Giancana has been helping a charismatic young senator named John F. Kennedy to become president of the United States.
Old man Kennedy, Joe, sent Sinatra, Frank Sinatra, to talk to Giancana. He said, if you carry Illinois for us, there'll be no bothering you. The Kennedys won't go after you.
Joe Kennedy knows that Giancana practically owns this swing state. If anyone can rig votes in Illinois, it's Giancana.
From the mob's point of view, it was a no-lose situation.
And the mob holds up the first part of the deal. They help get John F. Kennedy elected.
Was there mob money in the election in Chicago? Yes. Period. End of story.
Now, with the president apparently on side, Trafficante discovers that the new administration is making Cuba a priority. The CIA are asked to ramp up their plans from an assassination to a full-scale invasion. As a man who has invested heavily in the Cuban exile movement in Florida, Trafficante believes his men will at last get the support they need. On April 16th, 1961, Kennedy sends 1,500 mercenaries, financed by the CIA, to invade Cuba's Bay of Pigs. Among the fighters are some of Trafficante's very own Florida allies, the Cuban exile movement. The plan is that Kennedy's planes are on standby, ready to back the ground forces. The assault is to be a swift surprise attack. But the invaders are outnumbered 10-1. As Castro's forces fight back, Kennedy fails to send American air support. In just 3 days, Castro crushes the American invasion. It is a complete failure.
Well, the CIA plan for the invasion didn't work very well. It was an amateurish campaign that 1,500 or so men could overthrow all of Castro's troops.
Castro is now a national hero, and Trafficante's hope to revive his Cuban empire crumbles. The men he has funded are now dead or in prison. Trafficante has been double-crossed again, first by Castro in Cuba, and now by Kennedy's lack of conviction.
Santo Trafficante only had one culprit, and that was President Kennedy. And he blamed Kennedy more than anybody else for the failure of Bay of Pigs.
And things are about to get a lot worse for the Mafia. Giancana had helped Kennedy to get elected, but far from ignoring mob activities, the new president sends his brother, Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, to go after organized crime.
There are a number of different areas where action is needed. I think that in the field of organized crime, I think it's a very serious situation that's facing the country at the present time.
Giancana felt more betrayed.
The fact that he came up with money and helped JFK win went by the board.
Bobby Kennedy, by going after the Mafia, incited Trafficante into more hatred.
After first siding with the mob, the American government is now going after them. Twice, Trafficante has been betrayed by Kennedy, now seeks payback. But the mob in the north is under heavy surveillance, and Trafficante's mob ally, Sam Giancana, is effectively under lockdown.
Giancana was under such intense surveillance that carloads of FBI agents would follow right on his back bumper. Everywhere he went, they went. There was an all-out campaign against Giancana, which made him very angry.
It is impossible for Giancana to have meetings and completely disrupts the Chicago outfit. Other mob bosses are angry and resentful.
There was no question about the animosity that mob dons had for John F. Kennedy and for Bobby Kennedy.
The conversations about Kennedy were really very vicious.
There were numerous bugs picked up by the FBI. One of them particularly was from Sam Giancana, who said, "We broke our balls trying to get him elected, and look what he does against us, that son of a bitch."
But Trafficante is shrewd and keeps off the phone lines.
He was a Mafia don who was smart enough to avoid the limelight. He was never caught on a bug or on a wire, never implicated himself in any crime.
In Chicago, Giancana may be under 24-hour scrutiny, but in the South, Trafficante and Marcello certainly have freedom to plan the mob's revenge on the Kennedys. But did they? The committee had already tried to get to the bottom of mob connections to the assassination of Kennedy. 15 years earlier, in 1975, they called Sam Giancana to testify. But Giancana never makes it to the stand. The night before, he is shot dead. Then, in 1976, they called Giancana's right-hand man, John Rosselli. His first testimony is explosive, and the committee recall him for further questioning. But Rosselli mysteriously disappears. 5 days later, his dismembered body is found inside an oil drum floating in Dumbfounding Bay, Miami.
The three major Mafia players the CIA attempt to kill: Castro, Rosselli, Sam Giancana, and Santo Trafficante Jr. And the only one who survived was Santo. The way they were cut up and the way they were shot in their mouths. They were killed in a way that indicated they had been squealers.
Trafficante is the last man standing. But when Blakey looks at the evidence for his connection to Kennedy's assassination, Trafficante was nowhere near Dallas on that November day in 1963. He was with his lawyer in his hometown of Tampa, Florida. November 22nd, 1963, Dallas. Lee Harvey Oswald fires 3 bullets in quick succession. Oswald is a known communist with pro-Castro connections and a grudge against Kennedy. But his uncle and father figure also works for Santo Trafficante's closest ally, Carlos Marcello. Just 2 days later, Oswald is also dead. Killed by Jack Ruby, the man who ran nightclubs for Trafficante's friend. Robert Blakey now believes that there are too many coincidences to be dismissed.
I believe the mob was not involved. I was wrong about that. They did have the motive, opportunity, and means. But killing him, they discussed that.
And somehow Trafficante fits right at the center. In September 1978, Blakey calls Santo Trafficante to the stand. But will he crack?
Mr. Trafficante, I want to ask you a question that is very important to this committee, and that is, did you have any foreknowledge of the assassination of President Kennedy?
Absolutely not. No way.
Blakey decides to go for broke. He reminds Trafficante of the explosive admission that led to Roselli's death.
Mr. Trafficante, before he died, Roselli hinted to associates that he knew who had arranged President Kennedy's murder. It was the same conspirators, he suggested, whom he had recruited earlier to kill Cuban Premier Fidel Castro. Mr. Trafficante, do you have any knowledge of that?
No knowledge whatsoever.
The committee now discover firsthand just how shrewd a mobster Trafficante can be.
Mr. Trafficante, did you ever know a Jack Ruby?
No, sir, I never remember meeting Jack Ruby.
Never remember meeting him?
No.
The House Select Committee keep hitting a brick wall. The Silent Don isn't giving anything away.
He always took the same stance. He never knew anything. He didn't remember anybody.
His answers remain consistent.
Absolutely not. No way. No. No knowledge whatsoever.
After 30 months of investigation, 12 volumes of hearings and appendices, the House Select Committee on Assassinations draws to a close. The report is published in 1979 and concludes that while the Mafia was not involved, it did not preclude the involvement of certain individuals, Carlos Marcello of New Orleans and Santo Trafficante of Florida.
There was a likely conspiracy, and we pointed to the most likely suspects as Carlos Marcello and Santo Trafficante, but we said we could not indicate it with confidence that they did it.
The only irrefutable conclusion is that Lee Harvey Oswald killed the president and Jack Ruby killed Oswald. Despite Blakey's best efforts, Trafficante walks free.
Take Zero TV, smash that Rabbit Machine like button, share, subscribe. Till next time.